Number 10. Project Pegasus and the Chrononauts. While that may sound like a sweet alt-rock band, Project Pegasus didn't have anything to do with music, but with moving through time. Seattle attorney Andrew Basiago has been making claims since 2004 that when he was younger, starting at the age of 7, he participated in the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, or DARPA, Project Pegasus, focusing on teleportation and time travel. He and a few others were chosen at a young age because, allegedly, children could adapt well to the strains of moving between past, present, and future. Along with his fellow Chrononauts, love the name, he adventured throughout time to places like the Gettysburg Address in 1863 and to Ford's Theater to witness the assassination of President Lincoln, quote, 5 or 6 times. I don't know why he was so obsessed with Lincoln. He was allegedly even captured in a photograph. He claims that he witnessed 8 different time travel technologies throughout the course of the project, and that most were based on engineering specs and sketches by Nikola Tesla. And if one person was to come up with teleportation or time travel, I think it would be Tesla himself. Pure genius, that one. Andrew even met himself a few times in the past, and surprisingly didn't cause a paradox. His claims are supported by others who say that the Defense Department has had time travel capabilities for over 40 years, but has kept it secret. Andrew Basiago also ran for president in 2016, but we all know how that turned out. Maybe he should have used time travel to change the outcome.
In our 9th spot, we have Vladimir Putin. It turns out that the president of Russia is a time traveler. Take a look at these photos. First, we got a Russian soldier from 1920, and he looks identical to Putin. Then we have another Russian soldier from 1941, and he also looks like a young Putin, who is pictured on the far right. Too eerie. Either he's immortal, or he's a time traveler.
Number 8. Guardian Angel. In 2019, a video surfaced of a shop owner in Turkey tending to some of his merchandise. Very normal, nothing to see here, until a man calmly walks up behind him and casually taps him on the shoulder as he walks by, causing the shop owner to turn around. But not a moment later, a gate from a large truck driving by swings open, nearly killing him. And if it wasn't for this mystery man's actions, the shop owner would surely be dead. The truck driver returned to apologize for what had happened, but the mysterious stranger was nowhere to be found. Some commenters believe that this man had come back from the future to save lives, perhaps not just the shopkeep's. That's the only one that we caught on camera. Others have noticed that the two men look similar, even their outfits aren't far off, implying that maybe it's the same man, or their son somehow come back from the future. Though it looks like it was filmed on a potato, so who can be sure. Number 7. Rudolph Fence. The story of Rudolph Fence is one that has been hotly debated amongst the time travel investigation community. In 1951, people in Times Square in New York City noticed a man suddenly appear wearing 19th century clothing. He appeared to be disoriented and confused, and after running into an intersection in a daze, he was hit by a car and fatally injured. When his body was inspected, they found strange items in his possession that appeared to have come from another time. A copper token for a beer worth 5 cents bearing the name of a saloon which was unknown even to older residents of the area, a bill for the care of a horse and the washing of a carriage made by a stable that was not listed in any address book, old banknotes, business cards with his name and address, as well as a letter sent to him postmarked in 1876. These items in his attire have led people to believe that Rudolph was a man from the past, probably from 1876, who unfortunately slipped through time to a place that he didn't or couldn't comprehend, and his confusion ultimately killed him. Tragic story, really. Number 6. Bob White. In 2003, Dave Hill, along with countless others, received an email from Bob White. Normally, a spam email would just get ignored by Dave, but this one was too strange to pass up. The email explained that he needed help from a time traveler, or any alien disguised as human, because his life had been severely tampered with, and he needed, quote, temporal reversion to correct it. He resorted to the internet to find help.
You ever come across anything like time travel?
He asked the people receiving the message for strange mechanical parts that didn't exist, like an AMD dimensional warp generator module containing the GRC79 induction motor, or an Acme 5X24 series time transducing capacitor with built-in temporal displacement. I don't even think a Time Lord could help him find these ridiculous sounding parts. But Dave Hill decided to have some fun and responded to his message saying that he could get what he needed. And he even sent an old hard drive motor to Bob, claiming that it was a warp generator, which Bob gratefully accepted, believing it was the part he needed.
It's a time machine, Napoleon. You bought it online.
You're right.
It works, Napoleon. You don't even know.
It was later revealed that Bob White was a man named Robbie Tadino, a 22-year-old from Massachusetts who admitted to sending over 100 million messages for help out into cyberspace, and truly believed, and still does believe, that he was affected by time travel and needs to make a machine to fix it. The story he describes and the machine he seems intent on building is so specific that many people are convinced he has met time travelers or aliens and is really trying to recreate their technology with human things that just don't exist yet. Let's just hope he gets it all sorted out. Number 5. The Philadelphia Experiment and Montauk Project. I've talked about these before in a previous video, but they require another mention here as there are so many accounts of what happened that it's overwhelming. Allegedly, there was a secret military operation being performed in 1943 at the shipyard aboard the USS Eldridge. The experiment involved cloaking, not time travel, strangely enough, but when they attempted to conceal the ship with the technology they developed, the ship did indeed disappear, but that was because it was moved 10 minutes into the past, which reportedly caused some of the crew to go mad. And later, another secret military operation called the Montauk Project was tasked with creating gates for time travel, using psychic links from children who are much more attuned to these kinds of things apparently, and can open their minds more, so the witnesses claim. One of these many gates that were opened apparently led back to the USS Eldridge during the 10 minutes of time dilation, but these two experiments are linked by one person who has since shared their experience. Number 4. Al Bielek. Al Bielek was a Navy officer aboard the USS Eldridge during the Philadelphia experiment, also known as Project Rainbow, and when the time jump occurred, he wasn't sent 10 minutes into the past. He claims that he was sent forward to the year 2137. When he was rescued from the water, he was taken to a futuristic hospital where he was treated for radiation sickness they say he developed from the time jump. He described major differences in the world, the coastlines being swallowed by the oceans, worldwide government collapse followed by the rise of a system that allowed everyone to get what they need when they needed it, for free, by abolishing the concept of money. He was eventually sent back and continued to live his life, burdened by what he had learned, with few believing him, until he was later recruited by the Montauk Project as their program director for the psychics involved with creating the time tunnels, which he used to investigate as far back as 100,000 BC and as far forward as the year 6037. Of course, he maintains that the government has done everything in their power to stop him from revealing all of this, disavowing him once he went public with his stories. Do you believe his story? Let me know in the comments. Number 3. Time traveling Trump. Now, I don't like talking about this former first family very much unless it has to do with all the current investigations, but some of these coincidences are just a little too eerie, though I do believe that they are just that. This conspiracy theory came from a discovery on the Library of Congress website, where readers found books from the 1890s, one called Baron Trump's Marvelous Underground Journey, and another called 1900, or The Last President. The first is about a young man named Baron Trump, who discovers portals for time travel, and at one point in the book he was actually guided by a man named Dawn. In the second book, an odd choice for president wins the election, and has someone with the last name Pence in their cabinet. Even the address where New York's Trump Tower now stands was mentioned. Personally, I believe that the former president's son Barron was named after the character in the book, not the other way around, but the connections found are certainly interesting. Number 2. Mike Markham. In early 1995, 21-year-old Mike Madman Markham attempted to build a time machine on his front porch. Of course, it didn't work, but that didn't deter him, and he kept working towards his goal. He later stole the expensive parts that he needed and caused a bit of trouble doing so. Then, after he got out of jail, he went on a radio program called Coast to Coast AM to talk about the machine he was building, saying that he was nearly finished and would be testing it soon, even giving out his phone number so that anyone with knowledge on the subject could help him out. Then he disappeared off the face of the earth. No one could find him for months, after which he said he was going to travel back in time only with his cell phone, and later that same week, an old story was dug up from the 1930s of a man who was found dead on a beach in California, encapsulated in some sort of metal tube with a strange device, the description of which matches that of a cell phone from the 1990s. Could that be the eventual fate of Mike? And finally, our number 1, under the sink. In 2006, a Swedish man by the name of Håkan Nordqvist was fixing a leak from a cracked pipe under his sink when he noticed something strange, a bright light that seemed to beckon him in a way. He crawled in and suddenly appeared somewhere completely different, but he wasn't alone. He claims that he met someone there, or rather, he met himself. He claimed that he ran into himself, but a future version, perhaps around 70 years old. And since he knew no one would believe him, he pulled out his cell phone and filmed the meeting. The two men do look remarkably similar, but the clincher for this whole story is when they rolled up their sleeves and revealed that they both have the exact same tattoo, in the exact same place. We all know that one of the main rules of time travel is to never interact with yourself, so we're lucky he didn't cause a paradox and rip a hole in time and space.
In our number 10 spot, we have the Green People. Apparently in the 12th century, a guy and girl were found in Woolpit, England. They were alone and didn't speak English or any recognizable language for that matter. But that wasn't the strange part. Their skin was green, yes. Is this what that 90s song was based off of? I'm blue, if I were green I would die. Because coincidentally one of them did die. Dun dun dun. They were discovered by a villager, and pretty soon after the guy passed away. The girl eventually learned English and was able to speak about where she came from. She said she came from a twilight-covered place called St. Martin's Land, and that one day she and her brother were taking care of their father's sheep when they found a cave. They went into the cave, and after walking for a long time, they suddenly found themselves in Woolpit. That's pretty wild. And you know, I bet you they did slip through time from another dimension or maybe even another world because, well, humans aren't green, so that definitely screams aliens to me. Anyone thinking what I'm thinking? This is how the reptilian race started. Got it, got it.
Number 9. Vrillin Ashtar Radio Incident. On Saturday, November 26, 1977, in the southern United Kingdom, a mysterious voice interrupted a news broadcast and gave strange commands and predictions of the future. Accompanied by unsettling pulsing noises and echoes, the electronic-sounding voice claimed to be Vrillin, a representative of the Ashtar Galactic Command. Aliens or future beings sent to deliver a warning message that humans must denounce and remove all of their weapons of evil in order for an age of peace and prosperity to come to fruition, the age of Aquarius. If humans do not comply and turn from their evil ways, humanity will fall. Here's a little clip.
This is the voice of Allah, representative of the Ashtar Galactic Command, speaking to you.
Though the message is foreboding and super creepy, this messenger from the future actually makes some good points and gives some decent advice, like have no fear, seek only to know yourselves and live in harmony with the ways of your planet Earth. Seems like they were listening to the hippies at the time, and they had the right idea. After taking control of the station, they bid farewell and said they would leave our plane of existence, leaving us with their final words, "May you be blessed by the supreme love and truth of the cosmos." Aw. Thanks, Vrillin.
In our number 8 spot, we have the Old Hotel. It was the year 1979, and 4 friends by the names of Jeff, Pauline, Len, and Cynthia were traveling through France when they got tired and decided to stay in a hotel for the night. They found a hotel that was ridiculously cheap in comparison to the rest of the hotels on the street, so it was a no-brainer. The only thing is, the hotel was particularly odd. Not enough for them to go somewhere else, but still it had wooden latches on the doors, no locks, and the windows didn't have glass, they were just thick shutters. What? In the morning, when they were eating breakfast, they noticed that there were armed police officers in old-looking uniforms. So old, they had capes. Without thinking too much into it, they later left and went on with their day. When they were on their return journey, they wanted to stay at the hotel again, except the hotel wasn't there. After doing some research, they discovered later on that those uniforms that the police officers were wearing were actually from 1905. Whoa. So they definitely time traveled without even realizing it. I want to experience this. If I could have this experience though, I would probably want to be transported to the 70s though, you know, disco, peace, hippies. What more do you need? In our number 7 spot, we have John Titor. Obs, I couldn't make a time traveler list without the famous John Titor. John Titor is probably one of the most talked about time travelers around the world, famously known for popping into our time in November of 2000 and chatting up a time travel forum. He claimed to be from the year 2036, and he said that he was on a mission to retrieve an IBM computer from 1960 1975, but wanted to pop into the year 2000 for, personal reasons. And he said that since he was here, he wanted to warn everyone about the crappy future that was up ahead. How nice of him. A quick World War III in 2015 and a full-blown civil war by 2012 in the US. Well, perhaps he was, 5 years or so off, but some people say that because he revealed info that it actually changed the future and therefore the timeline, would be off. Apparently he was so detailed that it was hard not to believe him, but anyways, super interesting to ponder over. Do you think John Titor was real? Let me know in the comment section below. In our number 6 spot, we have Back to the Past. Apparently in 1969, 2 men were driving on a southwestern Louisiana highway when they saw an old car in the distance. The car began to get closer to them and they saw that it looked like it was slowing down and perhaps the driver needed a boost. The men pulled up beside the car and looked in to see a woman and her child looking at them in 1940s attire and looking quite scared and shocked as they looked back at them. They gestured to her to pull over so they could help her, and so they both did. When they got out of the car though and looked back at the woman, the car had vanished. Okay, did they travel to the past or did the woman travel to the future? I don't know. Is this what Back to the Future was based on? I think yes. In our number 5 spot, we have Montauk time travel. According to author Preston Nichols, there is a secret time travel base in Montauk, New York. Preston wrote the book The Montauk Project in the 90s, and he claimed that in the 1980s he reclaimed some memories of working on the project. He says that they experimented on young humans and one human had psychic abilities. He also said they created a time portal to 1943. A portal that specifically opened on the USS Eldridge, the subject of the Philadelphia experiment. Apparently in World War II, the US performed a series of tests to cloak its workers with essentially an invisibility cloak of some sort. Apparently in October they succeeded, but there was a bit of a side effect. The Eldridge crew members went insane after traveling back in time for 10 minutes. Apparently the workers were brainwashed afterwards and their memories were wiped. Wow, well honestly, I maybe believe it. If the army had cell phones in the 60s, most likely the government created a time traveling device in the 80s to go back to the 40s, right? It's possible. In our number 4 spot, we have Joffer Vorin. This story is super interesting and apparently there is no doubt that he was real, just that he might have been a little crazy. But you can decide. Allegedly in 1980, there was a man by the name of Joffer Vorin who was found in Germany. He apparently spoke little German, which of course made him difficult to understand. He claimed that he was from a place called Lexaria and spoke the languages Lexarian and Abramian. He said he was looking for his long-lost brother, but had to stop here as he was shipwrecked. He claimed that the world was made up of 5 sections: Sakaria, Aflar, Aslar, Oslar, and Uflar. Honestly, if this guy's story isn't real, I'm sad that he didn't become an author because that's some imagination. In our number 3 spot, we have the missing car. Okay, this one either confirms that this guy time traveled or that maybe we should be careful with who we let be doctors? One or the two. Allegedly in 1935, Dr. E.G. Moon was leaving the home of one of his patients in Kent, England, when he noticed that his car was gone. Also, the driveway was a lot rougher than he remembered. All of a sudden, he saw a man wearing several capes, a top hat, and had a large weapon with him. The man seemed to look like he was perhaps from the 19th century. He turned to go back inside the house when he looked back and he noticed that the pavement was normal again and his car was back in the place he had left it. Coming up at our number 2 spot, we have the Bookshop. Apparently in 1996, a police officer and his wife were in Liverpool, England shopping. The police officer's wife went into a bookshop and he decided to go to another store to get a CD. As he began walking to the bookstore, suddenly he noticed that everything became quiet. And then, everything around him looked like it was from the 1950s. He was suddenly standing in the middle of the street and a van honked and swerved around him. He tried to walk back to the bookshop, but it wasn't there. In its place was a woman's store by the name of Cripps. He decided to go inside, but as soon as he did, he was in 1996 again. He later found out that Cripps did exist, but closed in the 50s. Cool! This one has me a believer. What about you? In our number 1 spot, of course, we have the man from Torrid. Yeah, this story is one of my faves, so I had to make it first. This is another story about a man who is from a place that doesn't seem to exist in our dimension. In 1954, there was a man who was stopped at customs in Tokyo, Japan, as he declared that he was from a country that doesn't exist. He showed his passport and stamps to prove that he was indeed from a country called Torrid, and it was located between Spain and France. They asked him if he meant Andorra. He got, angry and said, yes, the location was right, but Torrid had existed for at least 1,000 years. He had never heard of Andorra before. He was then put up in a hotel room for the night while the police investigated further. His room was being heavily guarded, and that is why it was a complete shock to find that by the next morning, he had vanished. Dun dun dun.
Starting off this countdown, we have the photographic evidence. A couple of years ago, a man named Edward came forward claiming that he was a time traveler from the year 5000. He even came with evidence. Now, he used a fake name and had his identity hidden so people weren't gonna come after him. So according to Edward, he claims he was part of a top secret experiment that took place in 2004. During the test, he was successfully transported in time. He was taken to LA 5,000 years in the future. And it's not looking too good. He said, and I quote, "I was standing on a huge wooden platform, and after I realized it was the same city, Los Angeles, but underwater." This man's claims were backed up with evidence. He took a photo of LA underwater. I don't even know what to think. Either he's good at Photoshop or he's actually a time traveler. I just thought that the water would be way more polluted than that. Like, that's far too clear, It's a little sketchy.
In our number 9 spot, we have Maui Antoinette. I can't say her name without trying to pronounce it the French way. Allegedly, in 1901, 2 professors time traveled. These professors were from St. Hugh's College in Oxford, England, and they were on a trip to visit Versailles. Versailles was once home to the famous ruler Maui Antoinette, who is known for telling all her poor subjects to just eat cake. Let them eat cake, she said. Anyways, the professors Anne Moberly and Eleanor Jourdain were walking around the palace when the most unusual thing happened. They were suddenly inches away from Maui Antoinette. Dumbfounded as Maui was beheaded in the 1700s, it's pretty safe to say they did not expect to see Maui and all the other people who were in 1700s clothing who just appeared out of nowhere. Apparently, they all disappeared when a tour guide approached the professors. The 2 women were highly respected and no one believed that they would make up a story like that. So I guess we must conclude that they were telling the truth. Pretty cool.
Moving on at number 8, we have the TickTock time traveler. Now, I talked about this case briefly before, and I'm throwing it on today's list because it's the most recent case of time travel. Basically, a guy named Javier claims that he is a time traveler who is now stuck in the year 2027. The scariest part is that the entire human race is wiped out by then. On his TikTok page, he posts videos of him wandering the streets of Spain alone. He has gone to stadiums, airports, police stations, hospitals, restaurants, and malls. No one is there except himself, which is crazy because normally those places would be packed with people, but they aren't. So here's the thing. Either he's a time traveler and was sent to the future to warn us, or he's somehow faking it. But a number of people have analyzed his videos. Some people believe he edits everyone out of the video. Sure, it's possible to edit objects and people out of videos, but it's harder to do with multiple people in the shot, in which there would be, and it's harder if the people are moving around, which they would be. Another theory is that these videos were pre-filmed, that they were filmed during the pandemic when they were under lockdown and had a curfew. But in order to prove that that's not the case, he gets his followers to tell him where he should go next. He then will go to that specific place and prove no one is there. The freakiest part is he has gone to hospitals. If this was filmed during the pandemic, the hospitals would be filled with people. But when he walks around, no one, and I mean no one, is there. Maybe this is real and we should take him seriously. Who knows, but believe what you want to believe. In our 7th spot, we have the 800-year-old cell phone. In 2016, a group of researchers unearthed an ancient-looking cell phone in Austria. The phone is covered in cuneiform writing, which dates back to thousands of years ago, making this object thousands of years old. But obviously, we didn't have phones back then, when this clearly looks like it was modeled after a Nokia phone. Alien hunters believe that it comes from an advanced civilization that has come to Earth. Others believe that this object is proof of time travel. What's even more weird is that I can't seem to find much about this phone online, so it looks like no one has debunked it yet. Maybe it's real then, who knows? In our 6th spot, we have the man named Noah. Back in 2018, a man came forward claiming that he was a time traveler from the year 2030. He called himself Noah. Obviously, it's not his real name, and he sat down for a television interview to share with the world what life is like in 2030. But of course, his face and voice were distorted to protect his identity. He said that he can't let anyone know who he really is. Basically, he said that he will be killed for speaking the truth about time travel. He goes on to prove that he's a real time traveler by getting an x-ray of his hand. Upon doing so, it's revealed that there's a weird device implemented in his wrist. That's what Noah says is what helps him when he time travels. Not only that, but he underwent a lie detector test and he passed it, showing that his claims were real. Now, what did he say is in store for the future? Well, since this occurred in 2018, he said that in 2019 it will be filled with more UFO sightings, which, yes, that was true. He also claims that in 2028, that's when aliens will come down to Earth, and that's also the year that the government will reveal that time travel is real. That's pretty intense if you ask me. We're now at our 5th and halfway mark with the Antica Thera mechanism. In 1900s, a team of divers exploring the Greek island of Antica Thera made a fascinating discovery. They came across an ancient shipwreck. The ship was filled with statues, jewelry, coins, pottery, you name it. They were all like, booyah, jackpot. As they continued searching the ship though, they came across this weird object. It was a blob of corroded bronze and wood. 2 years later, an archaeologist decided to examine this and discovered it was an astronomical clock. But the items came from ancient Greece and clocks hadn't been invented then. This item was in similar size to a mantle clock, and the bits of wood fragments on it suggest that it was probably in a wooden case. They also believe the case would have had like a circular face or rotating hands. There was also a knob on the side, and the mechanism could rotate forwards and backwards. Needless to say, it was a fairly complex object for that time period, so some believe that it was left by a time traveler. If not, then what could this device be, and how come it was so advanced for its time? In our 4th spot, we have the year 3207.
Quote was time machine. They took me to a room filled by many kinds of displays, gadgets, wires that I had never ever seen. The head of project came to me and told all about that mystical project.
A couple of years ago, an unidentified Greek man came forward saying that he traveled in time to the year 3207. He claims that he was shot forward in time and spent 2 days in the year 3207 as part of a top secret military program. He was paid $100,000 to do so.
That after some minutes they would send me to the year 3207. As I understood, I was kinda laboratory mouse for them, you know. But the money and career that I was suggested were worthy for it.
He claims that in the future, the buildings were massive, triple the size that they are today. He also says that there were flying cars and that there was strange colored grass. It wasn't green, but a deep purple. And lastly, he said that aliens, humans, big animals, and robots were all walking together down the street. That's pretty interesting, not gonna lie. Don't know if I believe that guy, but some people do. I mean, he also showed photographic evidence, but claims that the photos got a bit distorted while going through the whole time travel process. To me, they kind of just look like bad Photoshop, but you decide. In our third spot, we have Paul Dynick. Now, if you haven't heard about this case before, then you're in for a shock. In 1921, a man named Paul Dynick, a Swiss-Australian teacher, slipped into a coma for about a year. For that year, he claimed that he went to the year 3096, where he switched consciousness with a man named Andrew Northman. One minute he was in a coma, next he's inside Andrew's body speaking a foreign language. For that year, he was living as Andrew. Paul was so scared to tell anyone of this experience, so he just wrote it in his diary and kept it a secret. However, just before he passed away, he gave his diary to one of his students to translate, and that's when it was revealed that he had somehow time traveled to the future. It's pretty insane. Could he be telling the truth, or was it all just a coma dream? In our second spot, we have the time-traveling murderer. Okay, this next story is going to leave you baffled. Back in 2014, a woman was found dead in London. It was clearly a murder. Thankfully, her attacker's DNA was found all over her body. Upon doing a forensics test, they got a match. But here's the thing, the supposed attacker was found dead a full 3 weeks before her victim. So how is it possible for her to kill someone when she had already died? So people think that the killer was a time traveler, and that days before her own death, she went a couple weeks into the future to kill this woman. I don't even know. It's just an insane case, if you ask me. And in our number one spot today, we had the London Hammer. Back in 1936 Texas, a man named Max Hahn and his wife were out for a walk when they stumbled upon this odd rock with a tool sticking directly out of it. This is what is now called the London Hammer, or the London Artifact. It was discovered to be part of a hammer that was trapped inside a rock that dates back to being over 400 million years old. Clearly back then they did not have hammers, so how the heck did a modern day human-made tool date back to a time where humans weren't even around? Theory goes that it was dropped by a time traveler, but I want to know who would go that far back in time. Let me know in the comments below, would you rather travel to the past or the future?